The air hung heavy with the sweet aroma of maple syrup, a scent that seemed to wrap itself around the entire kitchen, making it feel even cozier. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, painting golden squares on the tiled floor, adding a warm glow to the already inviting space. It was a picture-perfect Saturday morning, the kind that seemed to promise nothing but peace and relaxation. Sarah hummed along to the radio, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. She had perfected this routine over countless weekends, each flip a testament to her dedication. Mark, still in his pajamas, scrolled through his phone, a slight frown etched on his face. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the digital world. It was their usual weekend routine, comfortable and familiar, a dance they had perfected over the years. Yet, beneath the surface of their domesticity, a storm was brewing, subtle but undeniable. Mark glanced up from his phone, breaking the silence. "Hey, could you make some coffee? I'm out of it." His tone was casual, almost too casual. His tone was casual, but something about it grated on Sarah's nerves. It was as if he didn't notice or appreciate the effort she put into their mornings. Maybe it was the abruptness of the request, or maybe it was the accumulation of countless small, unacknowledged efforts she made each day. Each pancake flipped, each cup of coffee brewed, each small act of love that went unnoticed. Whatever it was, Sarah felt a surge of irritation rise within her, a wave of emotion she could no longer suppress. "You know where the coffee is, right?" she retorted, her voice sharper than she intended. The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Mark looked up, startled. He hadn't expected such a sharp response, especially not on a peaceful Saturday morning. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. In that instant, the mundane request about coffee became a catalyst, unearthing weeks of unspoken frustrations and simmering resentment. The peaceful facade of their Saturday morning shattered, revealing the underlying cracks in their relationship. Mark's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, his voice laced with confusion and a hint of frustration. He had thought his request was simple and straightforward. He thought he'd been polite, even appreciative with his request. He had no intention of causing any upset. He had no idea why Sarah was reacting this way. Her response seemed completely out of proportion to his simple question. Sarah, on the other hand, felt a wave of anger wash over her. She couldn't believe Mark didn't understand why she was upset. All those mornings she'd gotten up early to make coffee, sacrificing her own sleep and comfort for him. All those times she'd tidied up after him without complaint. It all came flooding back. She felt unappreciated and taken for granted. "It's just, you could have made it yourself," she muttered, turning back to the stove, her cheeks flushed with a mix of anger and hurt. The pancakes suddenly felt heavy in her hand, symbolic of the weight of their unspoken expectations and the emotional burden she carried. What started as a simple request had morphed into a full-blown argument. Both felt misunderstood and hurt. The coffee wasn't the real issue, of course. It was just the trigger for a much deeper problem. It was a symptom of a deeper disconnect, a misalignment of needs and expectations that had been festering beneath the surface of their seemingly happy relationship. Both needed to communicate better, to understand each other's perspectives and feelings. Mark stood up, his chair scraping against the floor, the sharp sound echoing in the sudden silence. "Are you serious right now?" "It's just coffee, Sarah." He couldn't understand why she was making a big deal out of nothing. He didn't see the countless small acts of service she provided, the way she shouldered the mental load of their shared life. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, blurring her vision. It wasn't fair. Why did she have to be the one to constantly anticipate his needs, to keep track of the grocery list, to make sure there was always coffee in the house? "It's not about the coffee, Mark," she choked out, her voice thick with unshed tears. "It's about feeling appreciated, about feeling like you see me and all the things I do." Mark stared at her, his anger replaced by a dawning realization. He hadn't meant to make her feel unappreciated. He hadn't realized the extent to which she carried the mental load of their relationship. He hadn't considered that his offhand request might be the straw that broke the camel's back. They stood there for a moment, the weight of their unspoken expectations hanging heavy in the air. The pancakes sizzled on the stove, forgotten. The smell of burnt batter filled the air, a pungent reminder of their sudden descent into conflict. They had fallen into the trap of assumption, expecting the other to instinctively understand their needs without the need for open communication. It was a common pitfall in relationships, one that could fester and grow if left unchecked. Section 5. Navigating emotional landmines. A communication breakdown. "Look, I'm sorry, okay?" Mark finally said, his voice softening. "I didn't realize I was being insensitive. I really appreciate everything you do." His apology, though sincere, did little to soothe Sarah's hurt. It wasn't just this one instance, it was a pattern of behavior that had left her feeling unseen and undervalued. "It's not enough to just apologize, Mark," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We need to talk about this. We need to communicate better." The conversation wasn't easy. It was raw, honest, and at times, painful. They delved into the murky waters of their individual needs and expectations, navigating the emotional landmines that had been buried beneath the surface of their relationship. Section 6. The healing power of listening. A turning point. As they talked, a shift occurred. Mark began to truly listen, not just hear. He put aside his defensiveness and made a conscious effort to understand Sarah's perspective. He heard the hurt in her voice, saw the exhaustion in her eyes, and felt a pang of guilt for his own obliviousness. Sarah, in turn, softened as she felt heard and validated. She realized that Mark's actions weren't born out of malice, but rather a lack of awareness and understanding. The act of listening, of truly trying to see the world through each other's eyes, became the bridge that spanned the chasm of their misunderstanding. The air, once thick with tension, began to clear. The remnants of their argument lingered, but beneath it, a new layer of understanding began to form. Section 7. Rebuilding trust. Brick by brick, conversation by conversation. The fight didn't magically resolve all their issues. There were still things to work through, communication patterns to adjust, and expectations to redefine. But in the aftermath of their first real argument, they made a pact. They promised to be more mindful of each other's needs, to communicate openly and honestly, and to never let unspoken resentments fester again. They recognized that relationships, like any living thing, required constant nurturing and attention. They learned that love wasn't just about grand gestures and passionate declarations, but about the everyday acts of kindness, consideration, and communication that formed the bedrock of a strong and healthy partnership. Section 8. Love's resilience, embracing imperfection. The burnt pancakes became a symbol of their first fight, a reminder of their capacity to hurt and to heal. They learned that disagreements were inevitable, even healthy in a relationship. It was how they chose to navigate those disagreements that would determine the strength and longevity of their bond. They discovered that true intimacy wasn't about avoiding conflict, but about facing it head-on, with compassion and understanding. It was about recognizing that their individual imperfections, when embraced and navigated with care, could actually strengthen the fabric of their connection. In the end, their first argument, as unsettling as it was, became a catalyst for growth, pushing them to confront their vulnerabilities and deepen their understanding of each other. Section 9. The first argument, a catalyst for growth. The sun, now high in the sky, bathed the kitchen in a warm glow, casting long shadows and illuminating every corner with a golden hue. The smell of burnt pancakes had dissipated, replaced by the rich, inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, filling the air with a sense of comfort and familiarity. Mark, this time, had made it himself, taking care to get it just right, a small gesture that spoke volumes. He placed a steaming mug in front of Sarah, a silent acknowledgement of their earlier conversation, a peace offering in the form of a simple cup of coffee. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, a smile that spoke of forgiveness and understanding. It wasn't about the coffee, not really. It was about the unspoken words, the shared understanding and the silent promises made over that steaming mug. It was about feeling seen, heard, and appreciated. It was about the connection that had been reaffirmed, the bond that had been strengthened. It was about the quiet reassurance that they were in this together, navigating the complexities of love and partnership, one conversation, one cup of coffee at a time. Each sip a reminder of their commitment to each other. Their first argument, though painful, had been a necessary turning point, a crucible from which their love had emerged stronger and more resilient. It was a moment of truth, a test of their relationship. It was a reminder that even in the midst of conflict, there was always the potential for growth, understanding, and a deeper, more